getting, thank you for the recording. And before we get started, just going to introduce ourselves, the stewarding crew. So my name's Anna. I'm co-director of Huddlecraft, one of the partner organisations in this work. And Zara and Jake, would you like to introduce yourselves as well?
Yes, always. Hi, everyone. I'm Zara. I am a non-exec director of Huddlecraft, so connected to the team and not part of it anymore, but I've been part of stewarding the collective imagination practice community since the beginning.
Well, hi, everyone. Lovely to see you all. Nice to see so many familiar faces. My name's Jake, and me and my colleague Hannah, who is sadly at a funeral today, but might be able to join us at the end, work at Canopy and are also co-hosts of the community.
Thank you very much. So just to frame us up a little bit, wanted to share with you a little bit about this community and why I've been doing this work. So you may have been in this community from its inception 2 years ago, or you may have just become aware of the space. And regardless of your involvement today, each of you is warmly welcomed here as we celebrate this community of more than 900 members after 2 years of learning, imagining, exploring and practicing collective imagination together. And we're really keen to use this space to celebrate collective imagination as a powerful way to identify how we work in the world and to celebrate this particular community of people that has been strengthening imagination practice and inspiring transformative change. And really thinking about how we're nourishing the threads that weave us as practitioners together. So bringing about a greater awareness and belief in how imagination can change the world. Yeah, we know that relationships and community building are integral to this work and to the practice of movement building and systems change. And it's in this quality of relational connection that we've been nurturing, from the community events to the seed swaps and harvesting sessions, through to the huddles, WhatsApp community, and much, much more. And we're just wanting to hold some space today over the next 3 hours to honour those activities and your participation in it during this session. And so the past 2 years of growing the field of collective imagination has really been a beautiful process to witness. And we're thanking each of you for what you bring to the space, to the community. And to give a flavour of what's been achieved so far, I'm just going to share a few highlights. By no means is it an all-inclusive list. But we've held more than 20 community gatherings, including seed swaps, harvesting sessions. In these, we've connected and shared and captured and distilled our learning from the various projects and practices we've been running out in the world. We've had 3 talks from the edges of practice, which have been spotlighting the people and initiatives that are really pushing at the imaginal edges in the field. We've been funding many collective imagination projects. There's been 71 in total funded across 2 rounds across the last 2 years, and 309 requests to the Practice Fund. And we're going to be hearing a little bit more about those projects later today. There have been 10 huddles over the last 2 years, 7 in year 1, with themes ranging from ecological hope to death and grief, to exploring the potential of co-creation in Web3 and much more. And this year we had 3 huddles running, or last year rather, but in year 2, we had 3 huddles that saw folks working in government contexts and collective imagination practitioners bridging the gap between the systems that govern and the power of collective imagination and imaginal space. And we've been brokering coaching relationships between associates from On Purpose with collective imagination practitioners to use collective imagination practice in placements at Nesta and in the NHS. And we've been adding so many fascinating publications to our Medium space, which now has 70 blogs on it from the past 2 years. And I can't recommend checking this out highly enough. And we'll pop a link in the chat to that page so you can delve into it when you get a chance. And so today we're going to be digging into a little bit more detail on some of those areas I've just mentioned. We're going to be spending just under 3 hours together until 5 p.m. GMT. And we really hope you can stay with us, but you are very, very welcome to drop into the session, drop out of it, and depending on what is taking your interest and what you have capacity for today. We are recording the session, so you'll be able to come back to the recording at a later date as well if you so wish. And in the session coming up, we're going to be digging into some of the learning from the Year 2 activities. So hearing from folks who have been involved in the government and collective imagination practice huddles. That's going to be with Jake in just a moment. We're also going to be hearing from some of the people who've been funded through our Collective Imagination Practice Fund and some of the learning and insight and ripples of impact emerging from those projects. And we're going to be sharing our newly formed Seed Library, which is a collection of activities and projects to inspire your practice. So really, really looking forward to all of these sessions in the next 3 hours. And we're going to be taking 2 breaks during the session. The full programme can be found on the ticket source link, and I'll pop that in the chat as well for your reference so you can just see what the agenda is and when you might be able to drop in and drop out. Really welcoming questions throughout the session. And there may be opportunities to ask, there will be opportunities, sorry, to ask questions during the session as well at different points. And we are delighted to say that we have had funding for Year 3 activities and development confirmed. And we are in the process of figuring out what Year 3 might look like for the project. So we're going to be spending some time at the end of the session, pulling some of those ideas out and really building on what was shared in the winter solstice session in December, for those of you who were able to participate in that. So that's a lot of talking from me. And I'm going to hand over to the brilliant Zuleika Kara, who held a session around trauma-informed collective imagination practice last year. I'm really thinking about this practice as something that is about generating new ideas, but also about changing the conditions or the soil that allow equitable systems to flourish. And so we're really delighted to have Zuleika here, who's a dreamer, facilitator and writer, to help us prepare the soil for this session, and maybe to allow us to find some space to land and arrive here together. So I'll hand over to you now, Zuleika. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Anna. Hi, everyone. So nice to be here with you this morning for me. My name is Zuleika. I use they, them pronouns or any pronouns used respectfully. I'm on unceded Lenape territory, the part colonially known as Brooklyn, New York. And I'm very excited to be here with you. So for the next 3 hours, that's a long time. So I thought maybe we could do some grounding practice, but standing up. So if you would like to join me in standing up so we can move our body a little bit. If you can't stand, that's totally fine. I will do practices. I will give you instructions so that you can stay seated where you are. So standing, let's take a deep breath. Let's just breathing in with our arms up. And if you can't put your arms up, you can just bring your shoulders up and then breathing out, bringing your arms down. Maybe you can do a few deeper breaths like that, just landing here. And as you're breathing, feeling into the groundedness of your body. So your feet on the ground, your seat on the chair. And just really giving yourself this space here right now to arrive. And letting your body kind of do whatever it's doing. Most people are off of camera, so if there's some swaying that's needed, some different movements, some neck stretches, just letting your body have that. And honestly, I invite you throughout this session to periodically stand up and take care of yourself. Because sometimes we can get really focused in on one thing and we forget to take care of ourselves. So this is your reminder. Okay, so if you can, even if you're sitting, you can do this. We're gonna just do a little body shaking. So kind of soften your knees if you're standing so they're not rigid and hard, and just start to bounce up and down. And as you can see, my breath literally just deepened. So maybe check out how it feels for your body to bring a little bit of movement. There could be a deeper breath. There could be a sigh, an exhale, maybe some more saliva in your mouth, a yawn. That's great. I know a lot of people here, it's the middle of their day, so there's been a lot that's happened. So this is just like a way to kind of let things go. And then if you'd like, you can start to shake a little bit more vigorously, bringing your arms in, This type of movement is just like not usually socially acceptable. So this is a moment to just let yourself have it if you can. Allowing yourself to really move, to just move through everything. Also, this is bringing some energy into your body, especially if it's the middle of the day. Yeah, and just letting yourself have this and whew. And then when you're ready, you can start to slow down, come back, feel your breath, your body, the rootedness below you. And we're going to do some arm sweeps next. So what you're going to do is you're going to have one hand and you're going to put it on the opposite shoulder. If you can't reach your shoulder, you can do your forearm. And what you're going to do is you're just going to sweep down on one arm and then you're going to sweep down on the other arm. And this is just a nice way to somatically release anything that's kind of built up today. I should have said this in the beginning. I apologize. If any of these exercises are feeling like a no, please feel free to not do them. It's really important when we're reconnecting with our body, when we're reconnecting with our rootedness, our groundedness, to listen to our no's, to equally listen to our yeses, but oftentimes we kind of override our no's. So it's really important to be like, if your body's like, nah, I don't want to do this, to not do it. All right, so we're gonna do a few more sweeps and then just check out how your body feels after you've swept. Sometimes there's some tingliness, sometimes there's nothing, that's okay too. Great. And then if you would like to, you can do a forward fold. I'm not gonna do it with you because I'm gonna let the people who are able to do a forward fold. And for those who can't do a forward fold, we're just gonna take a few deeper breaths. And the people who are doing the forward fold is just a nice way to touch with the earth. And the people who can't do the forward fold, our breath is the way that we're going to connect with the earth here. Just feeling into the rootedness of your body again, remembering that you are rooted, you are held, you are supported. Okay, and when you're ready, you can come back up slowly, vertebrae by vertebrae, so as not to give yourself a head rush. And again, just feeling into how your body feels after having done that. These exercises are here to support you. And we want to collect the data of how that feels after we do them, right? Like, how is that support? So if you're standing, you can sit down. And if you're seated, of course, you can just stay where you are. So we've got about, I think, 3 minutes left. We're just going to do a really gentle grounding, connecting with the earth exercise. So if you'd like, you can close your eyes, just coming into your body. And just checking out how your body feels right now after having done this movement and having kind of contorted your body in all different types of ways. How did it feel? How does it feel to be here afterwards? And if you'd like to deepen your breath, you can bring your breath all the way down to the base of your belly. And then really slowly exhaling, just allowing for some space, some presence. And then when you're ready, you can bring your attention down to whatever it is that's supporting you today. That could be the seat beneath you, the ground beneath your feet. And bring your attention to the physical sensations of what it feels like to be supported. So maybe there's some pressure, some tingling. Maybe there's some energy there, warmth, coolness even. Just really bringing your attention to what it feels like to be here, to be supported, to be held. And if you'd like, you can bring some imagination into play and imagine that the earth is coming up to meet you, to hold you. That whatever is supporting you right now is actually the earth here holding you. And you can be curious about how your body feels as you bring this imaginative contemplation up for you. In this way, you're reconnecting with the earth, a connection that is often severed by the systems of oppression. And if there's some tension in your body, that's okay. You can bring the breath to that tension, or you can allow actually the tension to move through and go into the earth. Trusting in the fact that the earth has held you for every step that you have taken and will continue to hold you for every step that you will take. Remembering that this connection is always here for you and it's a practice. So it's okay if you don't feel it right now. Just rooting here for another moment and knowing that the earth is here for you as we continue on for the next 3 hours. So when you're ready, you can open your eyes if they've been closed. Coming back to the group if you feel ready to do so. And just do a quick scan of the room. Scanning from one side to the other and orienting back to your space. Thank you so much for your practice.
Thank you so much, Zuleika. Really appreciate that invitation and that practice. Okay, so now we're going to jump in. And first we have Jake, who's going to be leading a section of this session on the huddles, the collective imagination practice times government huddles. So over to you, Jake.
Thank you, Anna. Lovely to see you all. Zuleika, thank you so much for that practice. That's just what I needed to start in my body here, because we're perhaps going to go into our heads a little bit, but hopefully not too much. So this next section is we're going to go till 3, and we're going to have a little bit of a conversation about collective imagination in government contexts, based on the learning that we've been doing with the collective imagination huddles over the past year. I'm going to be joined by 3 wonderful other speakers. And I wonder, because everybody's members of the community, if you're listening and you're able to turn your camera on, that's always very supportive of the speakers. So don't feel like you have to, but if you'd like to, it's wonderful to see everybody's faces and get that support. So this section is about collective imagination in government. This is something I feel very passionately about. I think all over the world, and certainly in the UK, we're seeing the governments failing to offer any viable imagination of the future of society, of the planet, and the far right stepping into that vacuum that feels particularly poignant today. And so it feels something very urgent. How do we get more of this collective imagination practice into system shaping contexts where it can have the agency it should have? And also, I guess in more practical ways, how do we bridge into some of these institutions that are currently paying big consultancy organizations huge amounts of money to essentially maintain the status quo when actually the times are urgent and change is urgently needed. The government and sort of public institutions are one site of where we can think about that. Although, as Anne, who you're going to meet in a second, reminds me, government's not something that's singular. There's lots of different kinds of government, lots of different kinds of institutions. So we're not just talking about one thing here. And before I introduce our other speakers, I just want to kind of personally reflect on it. I think it's we're talking about two very different types of world here, a world of government and a world of collective imagination practice. And I think lots of us exist in that interface, the sort of bridging of those two worlds. It's a very awkward place. It's a place of lots of compromise, but we also think it's a place of lots of learning. I don't think we've got all the answers to what we need to do there, but we've certainly got lots of rich learning. So that's the purpose of this conversation. So I'm going to see if I can experiment and spotlight oh, it's not going to work at all. Remove spotlight. Zara, could I ask you to spotlight Anandita,
Yes.
Anne Bowers, and Natalie Barron, who are and me, so we can be in conversation together. Welcome, all three of you. You've all been sort of brave enough to step into our collective imagination huddles in different ways this year, and it's been really fantastic working with you all.
Jake, sorry, who was the other person?
Natalie Barron.
Natalie Barron.
Yeah, she just snuck in because I think something's going on in her office, so she's but it's wonderful that she's here. So Anandita and Natalie, wonderful to have you here. I'm really excited to be in conversation with all three of you. I wondered if we could just do a really quick round of introductions. I don't want to be like too formal about it, but I wondered just so that people could place you, whether you could just say a teeny bit about your day jobs. And perhaps how you first came across collective imagination or collective imagination practice. How's this come across your radar? Anne, do you want to start and then pass on?
Sure. So my name is Anne Bowers. I currently work in the public health team in the London Borough of Newham, which is one of the most diverse and deprived boroughs in London and places in the country. I hold responsibility for connection and isolation, reducing isolation for school age plus public health, for cost of living and community wealth building, for something called the Centre for Health and Care Equity, which is a partnership between universities and communities and the council. And then I underpin that all with a responsibility around transforming our relationships between communities, council, and communities and the council. And how I came to this work, was that the other question? So I spent, I'm not a local government person or a public health person. I spent 15 years doing systems change in lots of different ways. And somebody who knew me knew Jake and said, they're looking for some local authorities to participate in collective imagination, and you're not someone in a local authority who'd run away from that language, which a lot of people would. Can we have a conversation? So that's how I came to it. And I just want to say, Jake, I think that governments do have a huge imagination, and we unfortunately, well, from my political perspective, unfortunately saw that on full display yesterday. It's just not necessarily the imagination we'd like to have for the future.
Great point. Thank you, Anne. Anandita, would you like to go next?
Hi everyone, I'm Anandita Ghosh. My day job is as the head of design and collaboration at the Health Foundation. So they are a charity supporting people working in health and care. And my background is kind of through service design, innovation, and systems change. I guess a lot of my day job is spent supporting people working in health and care hold both the present, but trying to encourage them to hold the future alongside that as well. So that's sort of how I came into this practice, or my curiosity anyway. And I also live in Newham as well, so I was part of the place-based huddle in Newham. So yeah, also wanting to have more connection and be grounded to my own community where I live.
Amazing, thank you, Anindita. Natalie, welcome.
Hi, I'm being moved from room to room, so apologies for being slightly disrupted. I am Natalie Barron, and I am Head of Profession for User Research in the Government Digital Service, which means I kind of look over a community of about 40 different user researchers working on different things across GDS, which is responsible for gov.uk, the website, and for things like One Login and services, digital services that are government to government services. So other things I do as part of my day job involve working with the digital centre design team, which is looking at how we kind of recreate the digital centre for government, moving from the Cabinet Office to what is the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology. So that's a thing that's happening at the moment. And the other thing I'm being asked to look at the moment is around working with younger cohorts and trying to understand what needs to change, how we need to change our thinking to sort of understand and meet people where they need to be met. So I'm very, very interested in how we help people make things with people rather than at them. And I believe that by sort of talking to each other and understanding each other and making room for each other, then these things become better. And I've always been very interested in that since I trained in something called participatory appraisal with Camden Council about 12 years ago, I think. And I came to collective imagination through, it's hard to be precise because I was starting to just pull lots of different threads and say, I feel that things need to be different. How do we bring creativity and imagination into this space, which is so hard to do that with? So I was just exploring lots and lots and lots of different threads, and eventually I ended up here, which I was really very, very grateful and felt very privileged to be part of.
Brilliant, thank you, Natalie, and welcome all three of you. It's wonderful to have you here. We're going to have a bit of a conversation now, and I'd like to include other people in the room as well in that. So if you've got questions that you'd like to ask us as a group, please put them in the chat, and we'll try and sort of weave them in, or comments. It's all really welcome. And I'm going to just sort of ask a series of questions, and you can answer them in any order you'd like to, but also bounce off each other. Don't feel like you have to just respond to me. I'd love to hear you responding to each other, because I'm sure that'll be a much richer conversation. So in a sense, we've kind of started we've gone into our heads, we've sort of talked about your roles, we've helped everybody in the room sort of place you in your professional roles. I wonder if we can follow Zuleika's example a little and come back to our bodies and our experience. And I wanted to invite each of you to perhaps share a particular moment from this year where you've been involved with collective imagination practice, whether it's in the huddle or some event around that, where something's happened for you, where you've experienced something shifted, a shift in perspective. So just somebody's going to have a story straight away, and as that person talks, the other of you could think about what that story might be, and just help everybody picture it. Perhaps talk, give us the sights and sounds and the smells and how it felt, and tell us a little bit of a story that brings collective imagination practice for you this year to life. Would any of you like to start us off? And it doesn't need to be a neatly wrapped up story with a beautiful conclusion.
I mean, I'm trying not to start us off, but I'm happy to. So just for context, I wasn't directly involved in the huddle that Anindita was involved. I was the sponsor of the huddle, but and we had 3 voluntary community sector members and 3 council members, and then 6 collective imagination practitioners. And the 3 council staff were all staff I know really well. And one of them works to me and was really skeptical about the whole thing and kind of skeptical about the process and the contribution she could make. And I think it took 15 minutes in the room before she was saying, this is fantastic, this is different, I can bring my whole self, I can engage in things I haven't felt safe to engage with. And that was the 3 staff members were all very different levels from different parts of the system, very different, all women actually, but very different kind of characters. And that was consistently the feedback, that they got to bring their whole self to and they focused on connection and loneliness, to a topic they were really both passionate about and dealing with in their day job. And as a manager and as a colleague and as someone really passionate about being able to bring your whole self to work, and particularly women being able to bring their whole self to work, that I found that, and I still find that quite moving.
I'm going to join with a story of, I think, 2 different stories of how understanding this approach, or not an approach, but understanding how to bring imagination into things has sort of short-circuited almost processes and created these really much quicker, more surprising routes to what is already there. And that's really fascinating, because government tends to think, I appreciate what we've been saying about it not being a monolith, and we are made up of different people and different organizations, and everything is fairly unique. But there is this, there is this need to demonstrate how things are being done in a very, very sensible way, which is as you would expect. And so that approach leads to something about being very evidence-based, being very data-driven, and having lots of dashboards and understanding the numbers. And this process was saying, how did we approach this differently? And what was so almost shocking to me was how possible that was and how real it was. So I was watching a recording of a session that I couldn't be at, so it was even more sort of removed and virtual for me than it could have been, and seeing how something was created in reality by a practitioner was just remarkable. How real things were coming out and being made explicit and understandable and present. So when things are present, you can talk about them. And the second time that happened for me, I was present, and it was because I was taking part in a Clown Council session where actually an identical thing happened. It sort of short-circuited the route to what was already there through moving, through making things extreme. And I found that quite astonishing, really, to be able to be part of and to see how very real it was.
Both really lovely stories, thank you. So our huddle was online, and we were focused on tackling loneliness and social isolation, and we were expertly held by Jake. And as we were sort of nearing the end of the huddle, we didn't really know what we were ending to, and I think we did all come in with a curiosity but no kind of outcomes in mind, which is very unlike kind of what, well, my day job certainly is, or I'm sure all of your day jobs are. And I think that aspect gives you a certain deeper level of trust quite quickly, because you're all vulnerable in that way. So you can build trust quite deeply and quite quickly. And as we were nearing kind of the end of the kind of official huddle time that we had together, there was a real, I guess, energy and restlessness around the fact that we hadn't been together in person, and that we were focused on isolation and community, and actually that we all wanted to I guess share what we were learning, or share our energy and our kind of relationships more publicly with our community as well. So we planned an event at Manor Park Library in Newham together, and it really, I guess, came about, I felt, quite quickly. And again, I think if I think about how these things work in day jobs, it would take months to do that, but that kind of snowball of energy and sort of deepening of trust really sort of experiment together and shape the potential was a real continuation, even sort of from our online experimentation together to sort of holding an event. I think we had about 60 people that we got to practice our sort of different techniques with in person, in real life with people. So I think that taking that restlessness and energy in a way maybe I wouldn't have done before was definitely yeah, something that I really valued for everyone else in the huddle as well.
Hey, thank you. Amazing stories. I really appreciate that. We've got a great question in the chat here from Tamsin that I kind of wanted to pick up on, because I feel like Tamsin wants to draw a bit more out of these stories in a way. Tamsin's written, what activities, questions, approaches, techniques were being used? And I want to reply to it first of all, and then we can bounce off it together. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, Anandita, because Anandita was in we were in the same huddle, and maybe also to give a little bit more context, the huddles were composed of pairs of people who either worked in government context or were community leaders and imagination practitioners, developing new practices together. And the practice, to put you on the spot, Anandita, the practice that Anandita and her partner Kulsuma came up with around using poetry as a way of getting really, really deep, really quickly into conversations was absolutely profound. Like the experience that we had in the group, in the huddle, using it was quite extraordinary. It was very, very moving. And I keep pushing Anandita to sort of write it up and develop it as a practice. But yeah, this something it chimes with your short circuiting, perhaps, Natalie. And I wondered if perhaps any of you would like to sort of add a little bit more about any of the specific practices that really kind of chimed with you.
Thanks, Jake. I'll maybe just add a little bit around the poetry practice, and that was something Kulsuma had done before, but also we were thinking about how we connected with a specific community that she had in mind in Manor Park, where she works, who wouldn't necessarily engage in other different types of kind of cultural activities. So poetry kind of felt like a space that was something that they would respond to. And I would say Tams and I have never written a poem before I did this practice. So I think as well, it was just that emphasis on playing and experimenting with things that you've not done before, and sharing that with others is still, I guess that feels like the process, rather than it being like specific kind of activities. It's sort of finding your way through something that has value and meaning to you, and then sharing it with the group. And I guess what that then means for the question that we were exploring as well. So how does that poetry relate to, or how people's different experiences through poetry relate to kind of how we create social fabric, or how we create community? And I think all of the activities we did through our huddle kind of had that lens on them as well.
The things that I'm thinking of, and it's really exciting to hear about the poetry, Anandita, we also had an exercise where we created a poem as a group, which felt quite magical, but it was part of one of our warm-up bits to a session rather than the process itself. So I'd love to hear more about how that worked. We had two practitioners who used a quite embodied, I don't know what the right way of describing it is, but people taking on roles of different things. So it might be an abstract concept, or it might be an abstract stakeholder that didn't normally have a voice. So giving voice in one session to carbon, or the people who in this group over here are largely unheard, or these stakeholders over here. So there was one group asking people to embody different voices and different stakeholders, including the normally unheard. And there was one session that was kind of working through a problem using something called a systemic constellation, which I think is a therapeutic model. So those were two different things that we explored in our huddles that I hadn't come across before, but were really exciting to see take shape. We use storytelling frameworks as well, and imaginative exercises of putting ourselves in imaginary places. So lots of different things, but perhaps is the question about activity and techniques it's not about the process itself. It's not about the peer learning and the huddle.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, go for it, Anne. Sorry.
I was just going to say I was struck by how every product, project, etc. in Newham was creative. How it wasn't, back to Natalie's point about the kind of how you go into a shape or a frame. I think it was Natalie said it, that go into a place where it's open and unclear and uncertain and evolving. And most of our day jobs are like, here's the agenda, and this is what we need to achieve, and is very much about the mind and what people think. The extent to which this was about the body and what people create and what people produce and the use of hands and this kind of thing, I was really struck by.
And just to add to that, in one of the sessions that I was unable to be at, but the facilitator was constantly saying to the participants, it's not about what you think. Stop telling me what you think, tell me what you feel. And that was clearly something that everyone needed to practice at, but really changed what we were seeing, I think.
Beautiful. So it's been, yeah, lovely to like really sink into that sense of practice and experience. I wonder if we can now do a little bit of connecting into our contexts, because obviously that's the big in a way the divide between these beautiful experiences that we might have and these quite complex contexts that we operate in. Before we get into all of the complexity, I wanted to invite you all to dream, perhaps, what, having had these experiences this year, I'd love to hear any thoughts any of you have about sort of dreams for the potential of this collective imagination practice in the context where you work or in government context more broadly. We can talk a bit about the sort of tactics perhaps a bit later, but let's start with the dream. Would any of you like to offer any sort of thoughts or connections that have come from your experience this year? It's a big one.
It is a really big one. I think I would just like to see a bit more space and create a bit more space for these different approaches to happen. So I find myself thinking about how to make space and how to give people space and opportunity, because I think where I am, certainly there is always interest and excitement at different ways of doing things and different ways of approaching things. So it's just how it can be introduced in a way that feels it's part of the conversation and not an add-on. So that's what I'm thinking about. And I think my dream is for it to be part of the conversation. So for everything to be a picture in the round rather than where we are at the moment, which is just in the sort of third over here of rationality.
Probably build on that a bit, Natalie, as well, to say is for me it's sort of finding people with curiosity, and I think a lot of people describe themselves as curious, and thinking about how we can tap into that, I guess, from an individual perspective, but more kind of collectively as well, because I think that's the first starting point to then lead into possibility and into imagination, and sort of a hopefulness, which I think everyone has. And often I think people, definitely in the work I do in health, and I'm sure in the broader public sector, people have to compartmentalize that away because they're sort of firefighting. So I think how we can kind of bring together the hopefulness that I know people hold inside. And I don't think it takes much to kind of inquire around curiosity for any of us. That probably.
I would 100% agree with both what Natalie and Anindita have said. And I would add two things. One is on a really hyper practical level, finding a way to evidence the value of allowing this practice to happen, both in terms of sort of the well-being of the staff or the community or the people involved in the practice of imagination, but also the impact of imagination on better outcomes. And in every local authority at the moment, Newham is particularly bad at the moment, particularly hard hit. Everything we are doing needs to have immediate, ideally cashable benefit. And even the word collective and imagination feels very far away from that, and yet it isn't. So that's one thing. And then the other is the kind of, back to Andy, to your point, like the sort of the permission and the safety to operate in this way and to bring those kinds of practices into the rooms that have the agendas and into the, it's back to my point, the first question about what was really moving was creating space for people to behave in the ways that they wanted to behave and bring their whole self. And we don't have to do that through embodied grounding in every meeting, but we can get some way. Can we get some way of doing that, particularly when we're working in practices that are human and emotive and challenging?
Lovely, thank you. It's all very rich. I've got two parallel tracks going on in my mind. One is a sort of slightly Paxman version of like, answer the question, of like, could we be more imaginative? Could we describe a state of working or of being in government which involves collective imagination practice? Could you imagine it? What would it be like? Would it be good? And then that's one track, and then the other track is, well, I think lots of people on this call will be in a similar position to all of you, in a sense of like really wanting to worry the gap between the culture and practice of government and the culture and practice of collective imagination practice. And I think would love to hear your reflections, your experiences from I guess trying to make space for collective imagination practice this year. And I guess, yeah, maybe what we should do is you can answer either or both, just to keep it really open. But yeah, I guess encouragement to sort of like help us imagine what could it look like, this imagination practice in a government context, as well as thinking about the tactics of how we might get it in there.
So my first like immediate word to mind, Jake, is like messy. Like it comes to that, like the reality of doing this work isn't linear as well. So that's just something that, and so there is a acceptance that you of coming into this type of work, that you are imagining different experiences, different types of futures, different paradigms. There's a sort of, I guess, depending on the scale of imagination that you can come into. I know, and we've talked about this, I work in health, and a lot of the work I do is around optimization, even though we use the word transformation a lot. And to be able to, for me, definitely holds imagination within transformation really closely would be amazing. So that would be kind of my dream. But yeah, that it feels messy. Yeah, I can't, like, if I try and unpick how the system could be different, it definitely feels very messy. And in terms of the second one around tactics, I definitely, in the last, I guess, couple of years, when I think about sort of different types of practice that I am working with people in health and care, it's about knowing how, I guess there's a language piece, and then also knowing how what you're doing can help them solve the thing that they're trying to do. So yeah, how can we bring that in? So I think of it around sort of some of the futures work. So how can you, and some of the work that we did at the Health Foundation a while ago. So how can you kind of build different futures? And part of that is how you can imagine differently. That's kind of definitely for me something on how I guess in my day job I bring it in.
I mean, my immediate reaction was like, are we going to be here for 10 years having this conversation? Because the answers to those questions are massive. And Mark has put a very fair point, very accurate point in the chat about challenging the status quo. I'm slightly black hattish today, and apologize, but my experience is that challenging the status quo is very difficult, and it's particularly difficult at the moment. And part of our role as people willing to do that is to somehow broker enough safe space to challenge it in a way that is safe for those doing the challenging and safe for those hearing them being challenged. Thanks, Mark. And I don't think I'd get away with doing the project now. I think there's too much pressure in the council for every moment to be tied to an immediate impact. Luckily, we started whatever it was 8 months ago or 6 months ago. But I think being really realistic about the state of different parts of government and speaking with compassion to those states of government rather than critique, and then supporting a shift is one option. And the other option is fundamental challenge of the entire status quo and systems change. And somewhere between those, or to Anindita, to your work, somewhere on that 2x2, and those 4 versions of the future, there needs to be, or hopefully there is some positive out version. See, Mark, I'm changing my hat to whatever the opposite of a black hat is. My poor 10-year-old now knows the definition of a black hat because he keeps hearing me be like, I'm being very black hattish today. He's like, what is that?
I love that. So yeah, I feel yeah, I was kind of thinking maybe I'd bring it to Mark's comment, because I think it's a very pointed way to end, but it really does name something at this intersection of systems which are complicit in sort of violence and oppression, and our desire to change them, and sort of like how close do we get, what compromises do we make to do this work. Do any of you want to, perhaps Anne, you've already spoken to it, Anindita or Natalie, would you like to speak at all to Mark's comment, which I think is well made?
I can speak about being in the bit of the civil service that I am in, which is full of, you know, hugely passionate people who are there to be public servants. So the idea of actually serving other people in a way that is serving them is really, really, really fundamental to so many of how my colleagues think about and do things. It's very difficult to be within a system and try and be changing what is happening. So I think we all feel that wherever we are. So I'm not quite sure, to be honest, I don't know how to address the point, because I feel as humans we come with what we come with, and we're trying to do what we're trying to do. And I appreciate that stuff is not fair, and I feel very strongly about things that are not fair, and I try and approach doing things about that in the ways that I can. So it's by, I suppose, making relationships and finding other people across different spaces and having conversations that potentially different outcomes and bigger outcomes and broader outcomes are possible. But it feels as if those things have become very hard to do. Possibly, and as you've been saying, each connection comes almost with a cost now. So if I want to collaborate with someone, I have to think about the cost of collaborating with someone, whereas I just want to open up a conversation. So it can be very, very frustrating to be part of something that is always needing to think about how it's justifying what it's doing as it's doing it, whatever that is.
Yeah, I agree with that, Natalie. It's sort of doing it in community or in networks or with others and finding out where they are. But the difficulty of that is more and more, and that isn't a valued approach these days in terms of where people are encouraged to spend their time. But without that, I think that's the momentum piece, isn't it? Like, how to build momentum around any type of work that feels that is dismantling the current system, and whether that's collective imagination or other types of practice as well.
Thank you for addressing that very crunchy point right towards the end. I wondered if we could just close, we're at 3 now, but just a very short comment from each of you. I wondered if perhaps you'd like to offer some words of encouragement or opportunity to the community, just perhaps just one thing each that you think you'd like to leave us with for today.
I'd maybe end on a hopeful note, just that there is a ability to kind of bring, I guess, some of the creativity or playfulness that we've described in some of the work alongside the intentionality for difference. So I think sometimes people think that those are separate, but they are together. So I think just finding the sweet spot between whatever that, for me, is playfulness, part of creativity, but whatever that is for you, alongside the intentionality, if possible.
I don't think I can add to that. That's perfect, Anandita. That sort of playfulness with intentionality and creativity. I think creativity is it has a place, and it's welcome very often in ways that we're not expecting.
So I will add to it, but I'll add to it with your stuff, Natalie, not my own, which is I think remembering exactly what Natalie said, that the majority of people, most people, everyone who's in public service of one form or the other, whether it's in a voluntary foundation like Anandita, or as a resident in the huddle, etc., we and everyone on this call is there to try and create, I would assume, a more just and equal, creative and enjoyable world, and coming in with compassion for the place that we're each in, whether it's frustration at the lack of imagination, frustration at the endemic and persistent inequalities, frustration that you can't do your day job as a social worker that you want to do because the system around you is breaking. If we bring compassion together with creativity and curiosity and playfulness, then I think we've got a real opportunity.
Beautiful. And Anandita, Natalie, thank you so much for stepping into this crazy space of collective imagination and government, and to putting yourselves forwards to share some of the learning from this year. It's been really wonderful being in conversation together today. Thank you so much. We are, I think, going on a break now. Is that right, Anna? Before we do that, let's just offer thanks to Anne, Anandita, and Natalie. That's been a really, really brilliant session. Thank you so much. And can somebody tell us when we're back?
Yes, so we will go on a break now until 13 minutes past specifically. So we'll have 10 minutes and then we'll start again at 13 past. So see you very shortly. Calling everybody back from your kettle or your fridge. And yes, we'll get started again now with the next section of the event, which is going to be all about the Practice Fund. And as Jake said before, if there are folks who do want to have your camera on, that is lovely. Don't have to, but it is definitely welcome if you want to. I'm going to be sharing some slides first though, so I won't really be able to see you anyway. So that's where we'll start. So let me find the right screen for us. Here we go. Okay. So what's going to happen in this session is I'm going to talk a little bit to start us off with some meta reflections, let's say, across the whole of the Practice Fund and 2 years of distributing microfunding to members of the community for projects and initiatives. And then I'm going to invite a couple of practitioners who were funded through the fund to tell us more about their wonderful projects. So that will happen after this first little section. So to give you a bit of an overview of the Collective Imagination Practice Fund, I think Anna said some of this at the beginning, but over 2 years at this point, we've now funded 71 projects and initiatives through the Practice Fund amongst members of the community. And that's been out of 309 requests. So the demand for this kind of support has really outstripped the cash that we've had to distribute. So that has led to some very hard decisions. 53 of those requests have been funded by JRF, Emerging Futures team, and 18 of those have been funded by Arising Quo, who joined the practice community after it was initiated in order to fund practitioners in Europe specifically. And in year 2, so over the last year, the number of requests that we've been fielding has doubled. So as the community has grown, we've been receiving even more interest in this funding. And it's been really important to us that we have been community-led in the way that we've been making decisions about the funding that we have, and that through doing it that way, that we've been able to sort of question or reimagine some of the perhaps typical or standard funder-grantee relationships within this. And the way that we've done that is through having 3 Fund Circle members. One of them has been me, and then 2 people in the community as well, Tim and Cass, who I think are both on this call. And we have made decisions together about how to use the funding that we've had. And I think it's interesting to observe as well that in year 1, and I'm focusing on year 1 here because people's work tends to run over a much longer period than just 1 year. So it sort of feels fair to look at year 1. 75% of people that we funded in our first year have documented and shared their work back with the community. And that's been a really important principle to us, that we are using the resources to distribute the resources, not to police the community and not to police what is coming back in. But that kind of reciprocity and having the learning circulate back is fantastic, and definitely what we are hoping for. Here's just a sort of a snapshot of some of our fund recipients for 2024 from across the UK and around the world. And it's been super exciting to see such an array of different perspectives, such an array of different projects, really varied themes, as you can see some of them sort of dotted around on this slide as well. And just so many applications of collective imagination practice. There's so much to learn from all of these different applications, almost to the point where that becomes a challenge in itself. How do you draw learning back from 71 projects? It's a big amount of work that's been going on. And really what we've been funding is projects and initiatives that aim to strengthen and deepen collective imagination practice. So everything we've funded meets that sort of most basic criteria. And then in year 2, over the last year, we also introduced some new criteria. And that was about being interested in projects that really can in some way make the case for collective imagination, that can show a connection between collective imagination practice and a material impact in the world. So seeing collective imagination land in really unexpected places, seeing it bring a wider variety of people in beyond perhaps the usual suspects, leading to changes in resource flows or decision making, and also supporting this community to tell a really compelling story about the value of collective imagination. And whilst that's been great to see the types of things that have come back in response to those criteria, I think in the Fund Circle, we've held that in some level of tension, because we also recognize that a lot of collective imagination practice might have a really deep impact on an individual or a set of individuals, and that sometimes the intentions of the work can be really internal. And so we've been really keen to hold the importance of being able to make the case, and hold the importance of really nurturing practice from where it might begin, or from the source of practice as well. And so over time, in the Fund Circle, we have developed a spectrum that we've been using, which has been really helping us to make decisions, and it's been helping us to make sure that we're funding really a spread of different things from the community, and that we're not preferencing any one type of project or initiative too strongly over another. And so, of course, any framework of this nature is reductive in some ways, that can't be helped. But on the left-hand side, broadly, we're talking about changing something deeply within people, so tends to be a deeper impact on fewer people. And then on the right-hand side of the spectrum, changing something more materially in the world, tending to be a wider impact on more people. And on the left-hand side, about connecting individuals to their power and agency through practice. And on the right-hand side, connecting the practice to those with power and agency, which I think is part of what was being discussed in the previous session. And forgive the very blurry screenshot here, but I wanted to give just a little bit of an insight into how we've been using that spectrum as part of decision making in the Fund Circle. And what you're seeing here is sort of part 2 of a decision making process. The first part is more typical, more rigorous, perhaps you might say, because there's scoring, there's shortlisting. And then when we get to this second part of the process, what we do is we map the shortlist across the spectrum that I described. And then we use a more intuitive voting method, which also really invites the life experience of those in the Fund Circle, as well as the frameworks that we put together, which also feels important. And this has really, really helped us to feel that we are honouring all of the different types of practice, and the fact that sometimes those types of practice are built on one another, and therefore you can't only focus on one part of the spectrum because it's all connected. These are some of the types of things we tend to map at different points along this line. So on the left-hand side, you might see projects we're funding which are about new audiences experiencing collective imagination practice for the very first time, or new practices being incubated, experimented with. Then in the middle might be more about application in a particular place with a particular audience in a particular context, and really forming local partnerships and relationships that can enable the work. And then toward the right-hand side, more about forming vertical relationships, so to those with more power, and really changing some of those more material things that I was speaking about before in terms of decision-making, resourcing. I think the thing at the far end, changing structures people act within, the idea of being able to do that for a 3K micro grant is a little bit crazy, let's say, but that's sort of the logical extreme of where that end of the spectrum might go. And so then, as I mentioned before, the sort of documentation and harvesting of learnings from these projects is so key to why we're funding practice in the first place. The top 2 images you can see here are from this shared scrapbook where people who are funded have been journaling and writing about their work after they've completed it, and also gathering images and so on. And I think there have been some really positive strengths in the way that we've done this. It's sort of invited people to do this in a way which is visible to one another. And then our intention now is to really try to help the learning circulate from practitioner to practitioner in the community. And we'll be talking a bit more about the seed library. There's the image at the bottom is a snapshot of that. We'll be talking about the seed library in the next section, which is really where we want to create an ongoing and living resource of the learnings and documentation of some of this work. So a couple of key challenges that we have faced in the Practice Fund. So many more great ideas than money. So challenging to make decisions between collective imagination projects. More requests as the community grows means that more time is required to review those requests with care and to steward the fund. And the more time that's spent doing that, the less resources there are available to distribute. So there's a real need for sort of proportionality as the community grows. Many competing priorities, you know, we've been a sort of in each round 50K available, but globally. So that's a whole lot of people and a whole lot of different needs and ideas. And then I think this tension between the real big impact ambitions held by many of you in the community, also by our funders, and the micro funds that we have distributed. And these really connect to some of the opportunities that we can see for developing the fund over time. What if we could also distribute larger amounts, particularly to those who have started their work and might continue and develop it further? What if we catalyzed more connections between grantees who are working on similar things? That's sort of something we've always wanted to do and haven't been able to do too much of yet within our constraints. What if we worked on a longer cycle so that we could really reflect the longitudinal nature of a lot of the work that people are trying to do? And what if we intentionally brought in a third funder or a fourth or a fifth, and we're able to grow the pot that we're able to distribute here? So lastly, we have been refunded for 2025 by JRF. So whilst we don't have the detailed information today, there will be more info to follow soon about the Practice Fund in 2025. So whether you've been funded before and want to continue, or you've got a project or intervention, stay on the mailing list and you'll hear when there's more news. If you've been funded, encourage documenting the work, because further funding will be going to those with a reciprocal relationship with the rest of the community. And there are several blogs which we can share if you'd like to learn more about the fund, particularly one written by Cass, also in the Fund Circle, which is a full write-up of learnings of our process in the Fund Circle, which is a really fantastic thing if you're interested. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to invite first, if he is ready, Abdul to tell us about his brilliant work funded by the Practice Fund. Abdul, are you there? Wonderful.
Yes, I'm here.
Great.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you well, yep. And just to let you know, I will time 10 minutes just so that I can give you some warning at the end of that. Over to you.
All right, thank you. So you can see my screen, right? Is my screen visible?
Yes, we can see your screen.
All right, thank you. So I am one of the recipients of the Collective Imagination Fund, and I'm sharing what we've been doing and learning so far. So I'm Abdul Semakula, and Semakula is the name of the pangolin clan in the Buganda culture. And then the pangolin is a shy animal like me, but it is also a keystone species because it regulates antipopulations and aerates the soil. And in some cultures, it's known as the guardian of the forest. And so I've been trying to rediscover myself as a guardian of our biocultural heritage that is pretty much on dying out. To talk about a little bit about my career has been that top-down, moving from the leaves to the roots. Like I wasn't comfortable working on symptoms of systemic failure. So I was always shifting. And just in 2003, I took a regenerative design and development course. in which we were invited to image a place in a regenerative end state. And the image, I imaged my place where I live in right now, a place called Chiwatule in Kampala. And the image I saw was so beautiful that it energized me to think about how we can convene the neighborhoods to also image their own, create their own image and be able to manifest it through external resources. And what I've been learning so far is that our careers aren't rooted in who we are, or in the seeds from which we came. And the seed from which we came as us, the Baganda people in Uganda, is what I could refer to as Ubuntu, which is the living philosophy of the Bantu people, who occupy most of sub-Saharan Africa. And Ubuntu is essentially the interdependence of all life, while recognizing the unique contribution of each individual being. And so it's really in the word itself. Obu connotes plurality, and Ntu connotes individuality, and that is nested. So a big place, a place is a big person with so many individuals. And so democracy is, unlike democracy that centers, people, Ubuntu centers is this spiritual twin between the whole and the self. But the whole can be elusive. So where is human agency and purpose most alive? Democracy tells us it's at the state level. So when you vote once in 5 years, but Ubuntu and regeneration tell us
Abdul, we lost your screen share there. Are you still with us? I can see your square and your name, but not you. Anna, do you think this might have to do with what you were saying about battery? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm wondering in that case whether what we can do is shift, and Chloe and Jeroen, if we have your presentation now, and then hopefully that gives Abdul some time to rejoin, and then we can pick back up with his. So sorry, that's a bit sudden dropping you in. Is that all right?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. We'll just have a seamless transition. I will just share my screen. Hello.
Can hear
Can you hear me?
Can hear you and see the screen.
Okay. Somehow I've lost all of you, but that's fine. You've got the important bits. Jeroen, when we get to your bit, you might just need to tell me when to move to the next slide.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, are you still seeing a slide that says a voice of soil? Hello.
We can hear you, Chloe.
Okay, good. And can you see a slide that says a voice for soil?
Yes, it's now full screen on your screen.
Okay, super duper. I'll just carry on. I can't see what you're seeing and I can't see any of you, but I'll just carry on. And if I end up talking into a void, then that's okay. Lovely to hear you all. Looking forward to hearing the rest of Abdul's learning and sharing there. But in the meantime, we'd love to welcome you into the world of soil, which Jeroen and I have been working on over the past 6 months, thanks to grant funding from the Collective Imagination Practice community. We're going to start our presentation at the end with a short story that participants co-created at a Voice for Soil workshop in Castle Park in Bristol in October 2024. If you feel comfortable, I would encourage you to close your eyes for this short immersive story so you can support your own imagination practice and kind of to immerse yourself in the voice of soil. You rarely see or acknowledge me. When you do, I'm dirt, I'm mud. But I've been here from the beginning. I've seen Bristol and her people rise up around me. I am at the core of it all. I am wisdom. I am witness. Some think of me as the earth itself. Today, I am an oasis in a busy city. I create a resting place for friends, a feeding space for birds, a galaxy for insects. But my edges are contained, my health constrained by sprays and rubbish and plants that do not nourish me. It wasn't always like this. Sheep used to walk on me, a settlement grew up around me, families planted vegetables and nourished me so I could in turn nourish them. And then bombs fell, buildings collapsed onto me, quiet fell. Bricks were cleared, grass sown. As time moved forward, the diverse grasses were cleared, my friends, the clover and the wildflower taken away, boundaries placed around me, the insects all but gone. You don't see me, and yet I am the very ground you walk upon. I am the source of life. I give you life. What do you give to me? I may be but a patch of space in a busy city, but if you notice me, I can help you to connect with the core of life. I am well networked, a teacher. I need you to listen. I need you to notice me. I need your protection so that I might nourish your children. I am your very survival. So thank you very much for listening. That was our Voice of Soil that was, as I say, co-created by participants in our workshop in Bristol. That was the kind of end of the road of some fabulous collaboration and thinking that Jeroen and I got immersed in together thanks to this practice fund. And if I can move on to the next slide. Yes, so this is an introduction to Jeroen and I. Jeroen's based in the mountains of the Spanish Pyrenees. You can see a tiny little X on the map there. I'm based in York. Jeroen is a designer and a life-centered design tutor. And I'm an anthropologist and I work for a food systems charity for the Soil Association. in the innovations team. And Jeroen and I connected initially through a shared sense of the limitations, I suppose, of human-centered design and systems thinking that excludes the more than human. I came across Jeroen's fabulous life-centered design school to run a session with our team in late 2023. And as our conversations moved on and we came across the Collective Imagination Practice Fund, we saw an opportunity to fuel and test and expand that collaboration. And what we really wanted to do with the fund was to explore the potential to inject a greater depth of connection within the breadth of policy and practice work that the Soil Association engages with. There's a lot of very purposeful work, but in the day-to-day it can get very busy and can become quite transactional and get caught up in the doing and this very non-stop busy work mindset. And we really wanted to create an opportunity for a group of participants from across the charity to really step back and immerse in the soil that we're advocating for, that's kind of at the heart of the work that we do in the day-to-day. So it really was about that greater depth of purpose. So yeah, these are just some graphics. Jeroen and I did some fun kind of prototyping together online as we developed and shaped the workshop. And some of these snippets kind of capture what it was that we wanted to do. We wanted to explore the space that emerges when life-centered design and the Soil Association come together to elevate the voice of soil through immersive creation of non-human personas, and influence the policy and practice work, and to share our tools, and yes, certainly resonate with that spirit of reciprocity that Zara described. And we had kind of scales to our ambition, I suppose. We really wanted to create fundamentally that experiential immersion, and that was the bit that we really focused on, because we saw that that's where all of the ripples would grow from. We also wanted to test some tools and to identify some use cases for that tools, kind of stakeholder groups in which we might seek to replicate that approach with, to share the impact of the work beyond the Soil Association and right across the food and farming system. And at that point, I think I'm going to hand over to you, Jeroen, to talk about the workshop that we led.
Yes. So I think what was interesting about the workshop is that, like Chloe said from the beginning, I want to kind of like invite people across the organization. So not only people that are doing innovation or design, but also policymakers, funders, etc. And I think it was kind of made it a very rich workshop. So what we did was actually start inside in the Soil Association office, where we kind of explored how we could kind of give the soil a voice, and kind of what kind of would be the scope around that, and what would be potential benefits. And then we went outside, split up in like 3 groups, and we had like 1.5 hours to really kind of make a persona. And to do that, we used like our non-human persona guide, which is like a 7-step work guide that gets you kind of not only on a science level, or kind of like a knowledge level, into kind of like to create more knowledge about the soil in this case, but also kind of like allows you kind of the space to kind of like really immerse yourself, to kind of like understand, feel, hear, listen, kind of in the environment you are. And the outcomes is actually what Chloe started with, like an actual story of through the eyes or through the perspective of the soil. While we did that, we kind of closed off with the presentations of the different voices. And I think what's important for this type of workshop is not only closing it off with like a beautiful story to tell, but also kind of like, where does this story land? Could you go to the next slide, Chloe?
Mhm.
So the outcomes of these workshops were like several voices for the soil. I think what's very important, what's really intriguing is kind of to see, so that like within 1.5 hours, you can actually change the perspective of people and include this perspective of nature or non-human. We also done this kind of like with our organizations. We do like 3 months investigations and then create a persona or like multiple personas, but you can also do it in 1.5 hours as a kind of a startup, as a first prototype. And that already kind of gets people in a different mindset. And then what we did, that experience combined with like the tool guide we have, we kind of turned into like a Voice for Soil playbook, explaining why we do need the soil, what type of steps you can make to do it yourself and with your team, and then also how you can share that. And I think, yeah, what I said, like, I think we really created some ambassadors for soil in the Soil Association. What Chloe gave me back is that, yeah, there's like the people that are in the workshop are really enthusiastically, they still want to work with it, they still want to kind of like move it forward, and they're kind of still kind of connecting. Next slide. So next steps for us is like spreading the playbook in the Soil Association, maybe also kind of outside so that people can learn, and following up with the participants of the workshop, see where we can maybe help them, share outcomes in and outside the organization. And we're already in progress. Chloe and I wrote a blog together that's also on the community blog on Chloe's Medium, and will also be on our website. And who knows, a follow-up project. Next slide.
Okay, so we're going to finish with a little film that captures the workshop that we put together. So yeah, hoping this will work. The sound might be quite quiet. So yeah, listen in.
There was a time when I was free, but recently I've seen the humans place boundaries around me and make me smaller. My friends, the clover and the wildflower, have been taken away.
You don't know me or see me, but I am the core of all life. I am wise, I am caring, I am a witness. I've seen the city grow around me, but not with me. My brothers and sisters paved over, the life in me squashed. You don't see me, and yet I provide the very ground you walk on. I am used, and all I want to give you is life. Destroy me, and you destroy the plants, your food, the insects, the flowers you love, the weeds you hate. I need you to listen, I need you to know me, I need your protection. Without me there is nothing. I need your help to survive.
Fabulous, and that takes us to the end of our presentation, so I'll stop sharing and reconnect with you all.
Thank you so much for sharing this work. It's really great to hear about it and to see some of the visuals and bring it to life as well. I'm just going to ask Abdul, who I think is back on the call now, whether he would like to finish the presentation he started. Abdul, are you there?
Yes. Yeah, yes, let me complete. I'm sorry, I was...
No worries at all. No worries at all. These things happen. So yeah, you were on the Ubuntu slide, I believe.
Oh my God, I had completed everything. Okay, so yeah, I was saying, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes,
Yes.
we can hear you well.
Yes, I was saying Ubuntu is the interdependence of all life while acknowledging the unique contribution of each individual. And an individual can be a place, a bigger place that has individuals, several smaller individuals. And but that also begs the question of where is human agency most alive? And democracy tells us that vote 5 every after 5 years, while Ubuntu and regeneration are telling us that human agency and purpose can be or are most exercised at the place or neighborhood level. And that's what we've been exploring. So this is the place we are working with. To be fair, this place is, this is not the reality. This is just 25% of the reality. They are better, there's more peace, there is better buildings than you're seeing here. But what's not really good is the natural health. And we are saying that if we restore the natural health, then we can restore the social and economic health. Am I still on?
You are still on.
And so that's what the Collective Imagination Fund has been enabling us to do, to explore what could this place be in 2030. And so we've been doing it in a way that you come and think about a place, a good day in this place, and then you pick a fruit that represents it and you tell us a story of what was sweet about this day. Then we know what people value, what they care about. On a hard day, you pick a sour, maybe a chili, a sour fruit, and you tell us what was sour about this day. Then we know what challenges people. And on a hard day, you pick a pack, rather, and to know the dreams, the life you dream of in this place in 2030, you pick a pack of fruits and tell us that my dream life has to have this, this, and that. And so we did that to really know the foundation, as the foundation of now reconciling these dreams with what the place wants, with what the land wants. We were also exploring the language, how language can be used as a tool of inspiration. So Obwanika, for example, means stewardship in Luganda, and Okwanika also means to lift up something. So we refined the process to start with that mean ceremony of instigating people to start thinking about uplifting their place from the current situation to a higher order potential through collective stewardship. Am I still connected?
Yes, you're still connected. We're with you.
Okay, so unfortunately, a few people or a class of people weren't coming. And so we decided to do one-on-ones with them. And so the goal of this project, the overall aim is to shift public opinion on land use. But you can't start from land. Land is a sensitive issue, you know? And so we were not talking about land in the neighborhood kinship dialogues, but when we reached one-on-ones and asked this question, what is preventing this place from reaching its potential? The landowners themselves were telling us that the way we use land is actually, in a fragmented way, is actually what is preventing this place from reaching its potential. And so in terms of what happened, when we reached when we were starting this, we talked to the local leaders and they were telling us people won't come. And so we were able to write an invitation letter telling them that we are embarking on a different process of development. And to our surprise, we got twice as much people as we were expecting. We also saw that there's deep desire for trusted, positive change. And so there is a leadership gap there. So people are telling us lots of inspiring quotes like that one. Tell us more, maybe this is something that we've been waiting for. Then in the one-on-ones, we are learning that there is both excitement and fears around recommoning land, you know, So there is neighborhood fears, there is fear of the financial system, but there is also political fears. But generally, people are very much, or landowners have expressed willingness to recommend their land. 15 out of the 17 landowners we've talked to are very willing. So the repos we've created, we've reached around 150 people in both the dialogues, the neighborhood dialogues, but also the one-on-ones. And we are creating a sense of neighborliness. We are starting to see a sense of neighborliness, caring, and trust in community. But also in terms of mindset shift, we are sensing, we are trying to see, we are seeing that people are, we are creating this sense of a new possibility, you know. Someone told us, you have planted a seed in us and now it is growing. Even landowners are recognizing the untapped potential of their land. In terms of external impact, we are also, because of this work, other collectives were inspired and have invited us to join them. So the collective, the Indigenous Commons, but also the Indigenous Knowledge Collective in Australia by Tyson Yunkaputa, which also gave us additional funding. Am I still on?
You're still on.
Yeah, so lastly, so in the next few weeks, we hope to bring these landowners together, the ones we've talked to, bring them together and align them on towards a shared purpose. And then afterwards, we can create an organizing team that will go on to steward the process of storing this place, regenerating it, but also register a collectively governed cooperative. Then from there, we hope to engage other partners in what we are calling an Ubuntu sandbox, where we try to engage public and private entities in resetting the processes, the structures and systems towards the interdependence of all life, which is Ubuntu. And so in that, we will be exploring, for example, what if we reset the business or cooperative registration process to allow wetland, the wetland to be a shareholder in this entity, yeah, because the wetland is the first resident in this place. Can the Ministry of Land, for example, create a land stewardship title to allow the transition from land owning to land stewarding? Can the city authority rezone this place into this bioregion into a regenerative economic zone? Last week I was talking to the Environment Authority, and they were excited about the potential of shifting from policing to collaborating. But also, can we engage the funding foundations and staff and investors to reset their bureaucratic processes from a push to pull paradigm, whereby we, instead of imposing these reductionist worldviews, we invite them towards a more holistic worldview and really create this atmosphere that enables ecosystem, social and economic regeneration. So thank you so much for listening to, and we are really grateful for the support of the fund and the community. Part of what we is in our process was learned through the regular engagements in the community. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much as well, Abdul, and for carrying on with that presentation after the tech hitches. It can be tricky sometimes. And Jake has said in the chat, and just sort of echoing, yeah, there's connections that I'm sort of seeing between these projects, listening to one and then the other that I hadn't necessarily seen before, and really wondering whether Abdul could use the voice for soil type approach, voice for the land, in future workshops as well. And loving how both of these projects really stretch across that spectrum that I was showing before and show different types of practice. We sadly don't now have time for any questions because of shuffling around. But if you do have some that are burning, do put them in the chat and then we can see if we can field them later. And yeah, just really big thank you to Chloe, Jeroen and Abdul for those contributions and for your work. We are going to take a 5-minute break, quick break now, and we'll start again at 5 past with the last section and last 2 sections. All right, so it is 5 past, so we will get started again. And yeah, we've got one section before our sort of closing section now that is going to be about the seed library, which we have been whispering about for some months now and in communications, and also mentioning on this call as well. And I'm gonna kick us off and then hand over to some of the others who've been involved in making the seed library as well. So the seed library has been an idea that we've had as stewards of the community since the very beginning. So in the original proposal that Huddlecraft and Canopy put together, I think we even wrote about the seed library at that point as well. And then the reality of running the community and so many people being interested in all this wonderful activity that's been going on has meant that it's only been in the 2nd year and really in the last 6 months or so that we've been able to start working on it. And the idea has always been a resource that can help generate connections in the community, that can help spread practice, share practice, fuse different practices together, and generally deepen learning and sort of circulate wisdom within the community. And so in the last few months, we started working on it in true collective imagination practice community style. So with a group of us from the community as well. Chris and Tim are on the call, and Maya has also been working on the seed library, who can't make it today. And we've been in roles as seed librarians to start to prototype and put together what this resource can be for the community. So I'm going to give you a little preview, because everyone here today is sort of our first viewers and first testers, I suppose. And there will be more work to sort of continue this on as an ongoing living resource after this point. But I'm going to show you what we have made. So here we go. So hopefully you can all see that. So we've made the seed library in Notion. And when you go to imaginationpractice.community, and we'll share a link with you shortly, you will land at first on our new community homepage. The first thing you will see is this lovely collection of images which come from the Practice Fund documentation. So all the different things that everyone has been doing and working on. We've collected together all the important links and things that you might need in the community, which somehow we have survived without a landing page like this for 2 years. So this will be useful. And then below that, you will find a preview of the seed library page itself. And I'll head in there in a second. And so what we've been doing is collecting collective imagination activities and also projects. This is very much in the early stages. We've collected maybe 12 activities and projects so far. And we know that there are many, many more than this to collect. So if I head into the seed library, and we'll be sending you all there in an activity in just a minute, you will then see the full database of activities here and then projects below that. And the idea behind activities is that they are repeatable sequences or steps of practice. So often things that last a couple of hours, that aren't context dependent, that you can pick up and use like a recipe or adapt or be inspired by and apply in your own context. So here's one from Devin, a guided meditation. And this is a good example of the activity being broken down into a series of steps that you'll find when you click in there. The transcript for the meditation is in there. So you can use this activity as it is, or you can be inspired by it and shape something of your own. And then we've got the projects below, and these are more of a full case study. So we've got Abdul's case study here, who is just speaking. So there's a summary of the project, more on the background, the project in action, photos, how did it go, what did he learn, all kinds of things like that. So not so much something that you can pick up and apply, but definitely something to be inspired by. So that's what we've got. And I'll stop sharing and hand over to Chris, who's going to tell us a bit more about the process of developing it so far.
Sure. Could you share the slides, Zara? Is that right, or should I bring them up?
They have vanished, but I can find them if you don't have access to them.
I've just got them, so.
Okay, so have I, but yeah, either way. Let me know if you want me to screen share.
Sure. Can everyone see the screen? Yes, cool. I'm getting thumbs up. Cool. So yeah, I just wanted to share a little bit of background about the design process, because we've ended up with quite a seemingly simple Notion site, and it is a humble beginning, and there was a lot of work that went on in the background to get there, and there's a lot of work that will continue to go on as we continue from here. So we started out with a lot of the existing content that was already documented by our community, a lot of brilliant learnings in the scrapbooks, a lot of brilliant blog posts, and picking out a lot of different modalities, from working with new constructs of language to building community gardens, and lots of different focuses, from focusing on loneliness and isolation to focusing on power, and trying to start to create a new home for all of this. So we did a bunch of interviews with one-on-ones ourselves as practitioners, introduced some questions into more of the community gatherings about how you would like to connect to other people in the community, what you would like to learn from them, and mapped out a couple of different stakeholders. We have our practitioners, that's our main stakeholder here, but we also have the stewards of the community. We also have our funders who might interact with us. And yeah, we learned a lot of different things about the community of practice ecosystem in general, people who want to connect with other practitioners because they might feel geographically isolated, or people who might want to unblock like a certain aspect of their process. Perhaps it's about engaging with difficult stakeholders, or perhaps it's about creating a narrative that is convincing in some way. So lots of people with similar projects, lots of people with different projects trying to learn relevant things to each other. So taking all of that, the existing content, the needs that we identified, we went through a series of brainstorming and eventually had to constrain our solution. But we spent a lot of time thinking about our activities and what level of abstraction we choose to take and how we curate these activities. We were really trying to focus on the relationality here. So it's not, we're really trying to stay away from something that's super extractive, that someone can just like take a recipe and use it without really knowing where it's come from or who they might approach to engage with this more. So yeah, fair authorship and attribution. We checked out a bunch of different platforms. In the end, we decided humble beginning with Notion. It's a great place to prototype with a bit more feedback from the community. So it'll be a growing resource where we can edit quickly, and it might become a back-end CMS for something that's a little bit more custom, a little bit more interactive in the future. So that's what we've ended up with our Imagination Practice community link, which will drop in soon. And what next? So the existing metaphor of the seed library came very much from the scrapbook that the Collective Imagination Practice community was already using in the harvesting sessions. Lots of people would turn up to these harvesting sessions to have help with documenting their projects, but also a lot of people would just turn up to have a chat about their projects themselves. So at some point, the seed library will become more of an integral part in that harvesting and helping for each other, we hope. We hope it to be even more useful when it comes to offering services to each other, providing for our practitioners' needs, whether that's through some kind of asks and offers or through just making visible the different types of experience one another can help with. And eventually we'll integrate into some kind of ecosystem in the community that includes posting and messaging and Q&A. And that we looked at Hilo. Hilo's just had a big redesign as well. It's a community platform with pro-social principles built in, if anybody doesn't know it. And yeah, it seems like we might indeed use Hilo in combination with the seed library in the future. But certainly there will be, more dynamic forms of connecting with the community that integrates the seed library soon. Yeah, that's it from me about the design process and where we're going. I hope you use it, and I'll hand over.
Over to you, Tim, I think.
It is. Hello. Thanks, Chris, Zara. Chris said, we hope you'll use it. We're not just going to hope. We're going to give you a chance to do it now. So we've had a couple of hours of hearing from lots of other people talking to you. So now we're going to split out into breakout groups and give you the chance to get to know each other a bit, hear a bit about what you're doing in terms of collective imagination practice, and then dive into the seed library to have a look, see how it works, how it can help you. Tell us what you find when we come back, but also tell us what you'd like to find, and hopefully it'll prompt up some ideas for other practice and activities and projects that you want to see represented in there. So we'll talk about all that at the end. We've had to cut the breakout sessions ever so slightly because we're running ever so slightly over. So you're going to have 12 minutes in breakout groups of 3. And basically what we want you to start is by telling each other why you're interested in collective imagination practice and what you want to do with it this year. Give each other, 2 minutes maybe to do that. So you've got plenty of time to get into a bit of a conversation about what you're doing with the practice. And then jump into the seed library and have a look at how that can help you with that, if it sparks any ideas, if there's any things you might want to pick up and run with, or if there's anything you want to feedback. And then when you've had your 12 minutes of conversing in your little groups, we'll come back together, and if we've got time, we'll do some feedback, and you can let us know what you think. I think Zara's got groups all ready to go, so you're going to get randomly put in a group with 2 other beautiful collective imagination practitioners. So have lots of fun. We'll see you in a while. Were there any? Did anyone find any specific practice rather than just the approach? Were there any useful practices that anyone found in there, or were there any practices that you'd really like to develop yourself and you were hoping to see in there? Let us know if there was any activities or practices that you wanted to see in there. Yeah, the preparing, framing, and harvesting, that came, Libby, that came from lots of discussion that we were having about what's the structure that this works through. And eventually we realized that so many of the approaches go through those common phases of, you know, how do you bring people into that space and get them ready to do some imagination? What does the imagination look like? And then how do you capture it all at the end and take it somewhere?
I'll jump in with something that came out of the group that I was speaking with Sophie about, and we were talking about like rights of nature and how many people are engaged in trying to give rights to whether it be a river, a body of water, and in this case it's a soil. And I'm really just excited to see more of our practitioners and their projects and activities start to like collect around that center point of rights of nature. We didn't talk about that too much, but I feel like the non-human persona is definitely a way about engaging with that. And I think there's many more practitioners too. So maybe that's an emerging tag.
Stephen, in answer to the question, will it be a way to create links between people? Yes, because so you'll see that there's already some people emerging in there. We've got the seed library developing, and there's also a separate project that uses HILO, which has been funded by the Collective Imagination Practice community. So we're just trying to work out exactly what functionality each of the two platforms offers and how we weave them together. Live frequently asked questions. That is a great suggestion. So we've got a proper place that you can provide feedback, because that's what this is all about. You know, as Chris said, it's humble beginnings. We know that there's not an extensive catalogue of different practices in there, but we wanted to get something out there so that you guys could touch and feel it and see how you wanted to use it. So there's a feedback form which some of you might have found, but I'll pop it in the chat. We'll send it out as a link afterwards as well, so that you can give us your feedback. And there's also ways to contribute as well. So if you want to suggest activities to put in there, there's a little form on there, which again I'll pop it into the chat. So we'd really welcome suggestions for other contributions. We've already got other people from the Practice Fund community who've come forward and said, yeah, we'd love to put ours in there, and that's what it's for. Because hopefully this way it becomes much more usable for you all, and makes sense. Yeah, I'm going to hand over to Zara really for the final bit of the session on the seed library.
Well, I'm just going to close us off, really. So we've somehow managed to get back on time, or almost ahead of time. Yeah, so that's where we've got to with it. As you can see, the intention is very much for the seed library to be an ongoing, you know, evolving, living resource that we're going to continue to contribute to over time, and that's going to become more and more useful the more tags, the more people that are involved, and that will mean that when you search you'll be able to find something relevant to your practice. So that's definitely something that in some way we will be continuing the work on this year. As for sort of immediate next steps, we're going to collect some of the thoughts that we have heard in the chat, maybe some things that some of you put in the feedback form, and we'll do a bit of a kind of a tidy up of things or responding to some of those. And then in a couple of weeks, I imagine we will then email it out to everybody in the community. So this is our sort of soft testing. And yeah, really inviting those of you who might have some activities up your sleeve or projects. If you're really keen to sort of get something out to the community via the seed library, let us know, and that's something that we can work with you on. And yeah, we really hope that that is a useful resource for the community going forward. So thanks for having a look with us today. And I think that just leaves handing over to you, Hannah, for the final section of the event.
Thank you, Zara. Lovely to see you all. I came a little bit late to this meeting because I was at a funeral this morning, but it was one of those really good funerals. So I'm feeling very encouraged by it. Part of that circle of living and dying well. And so it's great to be here with you. Before our last little section, we are going to invite you to talk to us about, on a mural board, to talk to us about what your maybe dreams for this next year of the community might be, or maybe your questions. So we found out at the sort of end of December that we have got another year of funding from the Joseph Rowntree Foundation. Hurrah! So that means, of course, we'll have a pot of money to give out to folks for doing their brilliant imagination things. And we will, as we have done, run sessions and meetings and all, there will be stuff, but we haven't really designed that yet. And that is partly because we took a holiday over Christmas, and partly also because we still need to talk to the JRF about what their hopes and dreams for it might be. And it's good to get that clear first before we do our own dreaming. And also because we really wanted to do some sort of checking in with you guys about sort of reflecting and thinking about how it's been, how it could be. So we'll come to that in a moment. We sort of started it when we had our little solstice meeting, and maybe some of you were there at that. So I picked out some themes from that solstice meeting we had together before the end of the year. And I've asked some specific questions based on those themes. But before we jump into that mural, let's just do a little bit of getting in our bodies and feeling into our emotions and feeling into our longing and getting sort of comfy again. And I know you didn't have a break that long ago, but it's the afternoon. So have a good stretch. Wiggle your toes. Yeah. A nice bit of neck movement there, Seppi. Thank you. I'm inspired by that. Yeah, good one, Jake. Yeah, pull your shoulder blades together. That's always nice, isn't it? Oh, yeah. Natalia, thank you. Thanks for that reminder. Lovely. Stand up if you want to. That's also fine. And then when you've had enough of that, just plant your feet on the floor. And all we're going to do is we're going to take 7 deep breaths together. Apparently, a samurai warrior, which you all are, can make any decision in 7 breaths. So let's just take 7 breaths. And whenever you're done, and really nice belly breaths, where your belly comes out really far, and you really take the breath in and let it really empty. And then I will put the link in the chat and we'll have a little look at those questions. All right, so I'm going to start my 7 breaths now. And you can just start now too. All right, if you're still breathing, no rush. Zara's a quick breather. So feel free to find your way when you're when you're ready with your breath, to that mural. And I'm just going to tell you what the questions are on it. And it is very beautiful. And for that, we have Zara to thank. So there are 4 questions which I've developed from what was offered at our solstice gathering just before the new year. And the one is, what will help build the field of collective imagination practice? You know, that's one of the things we're about. And then there's one which is, what will help strengthen you own practice? I should obviously say your own practice. What will, so feel free to correct that, anyone who's on that. Yeah. What will help strengthen your own practice that the community can offer? This is the question. And then in the pink, we have, what will help you connect to others and find a home in this community? And then that one that's written in white at the black at the top with the green around it. How do we community stewards, so Huddlecraft and Canopy, hold power? How can we grow inclusion and transparency? You know, we've been doing this for 2 years, and we want to make sure that we do that in a really a good way, an inclusive way. So we're really up for hearing any reflections on that. I'm just going to invite you to go wherever you feel drawn. We've got about 15 minutes. After about 10 minutes, I will invite you to look at what's been put on there already, and feel free to sort of add extra thumbs up or ×1 or ticks or whatever. Like, you know, if there are some that you feel, oh yes, that's a yes for me, I'll give you that chance. But for now, I'm just going to let you get on with that. And I've just realised it might be nice to put some music on. The slight disadvantage of that is that it sometimes affects the recording, but I think we don't need a recording of us doing this, really, do we? Doesn't matter if it cuts this bit out, because we'll have all the stuff on the mural. So I'm going to stop whittering on, and I'm going to see if I can give you a bit of music whilst we're at this. Lovely. Thank you, everyone, for that. And sorry about the very loudness at the beginning. I've got headphones on. I don't think it's so loud for me. This is such a wonderful collection of reflections. And if anyone couldn't get into it, or you know, was on a phone or whatever, you know, do feel free to email us any reflections you want to have to add to this, because we're really eager to hear them. And what will happen with this is, as we're going into that planning for 2025, we will have a look at these and really try and make sure that as we're doing our planning, we honour what's been said. And I'm particularly interested in those ones about, you know, ways in which we can maybe distribute the power a bit more, have more micro roles, all these that response to that question. I mean, they're all really important, of course they are, but you know, it's really important that we reflect on how we're doing this together, and that it feels like that's right. So big thank you for that. And just really coming into land now about what to expect in the next few months. So we have a seed swap, and for those of you that haven't been to a seed swap before, that means when a member of the community takes us through some of their practice and some of their learning. So it's quite informal, it's usually quite experiential, and we're going to be hearing from Pooja, who will be exploring with us how the 3 horizons, how she's been working with the 3 horizons framework. A 3 horizons framework, if you haven't heard of that before, it's like it's a sort of futures tool, and it's incredibly useful when combined with imagination. And she has been working on projects with women of colour, and she'll be bringing some of her insights to that. And that will be on I can't give you the exact date, but it'll be on a Monday, either late February, early March. So it will come through on the email, that one. And other than that, what else would we like? Anything else we'd like to announce at this stage, fellow stewards? Or I think that's it, isn't it? Zara, anything extra?
Just that we will be thinking over the next few weeks more about priorities for this year, and we'll be in touch with more details.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you all for coming. It seems, I feel like, because I only came in halfway through, I feel like I've missed the full vibe, but it's lovely to come into this gathering and to be with you all at the end. Thank you very much for all your thoughts and contributions, and we'll be in touch soon.
Thanks, everyone. See you soon.
Thanks for being here, everyone.